Okay, yeah, so back again, and I want to talk about, I'm involved in the MBTI community on YouTube and have been interested in MBTI and personality theory and personality tests and all of that and psychology in general for the past probably around 8 years. And even before that, I think I was in high school when I discovered cognitive typology. And here's the thing with these personality tests and maybe how the tests can be refined, and it's an important point to consider. Um, even if you know we assume the validity of these systems, um, and it's this, right? So on these conventional tests, uh, individuals self-report, and you know that is the fundamental issue with these tests, I think. And um, and it applies to Enneagram, it applies to MBTI, it applies to really any personality test which relies on self-reporting. And inherently, these tests, to an extent, have to rely on self-reporting uh, because we simply can't get inside the individual's head in any way, right? Um, to discover objective truths about their self and their cognitive processes. And so we are inherently reliant upon the self-reporting of individuals taking these tests. And that's an if we want to apply the tests, uh, that's an inescapable, right, obstacle, uh, at least at this point, until we can model brain structure and then make inferences from those structures, anatomically and in other respects. Um, so, you know, that's I think the issue, and I don't think that I don't think it's a decisive any kind of decisive defeat and invalidation of these systems and these tests. But regardless, I think it needs to be considered because, individuals, to the extent, individuals are, often people, are not really objective about their, feelings on, uh, you know, many issues. Um, and that is, and there may be something to be said that, everyone is kind of self-centered and um, either uh, self-aggrandizing or self-deprecating. And objectivity about the self, if we're going to, try to type particular individuals, these tests are more interesting theoretically, especially cognitive typology systems like MBTI and cognitive function theory are very fascinating and are very good languages that we can use to define different ways of thinking. Regardless, the self-reporting limitation uh, is a big one. And it definitely needs to be considered perhaps a little bit more than it is, I think, a little bit more critically. Um, now, tests are testing people on these things, even asking survey questions and stuff like that is tricky because, the framing of the questions and the framing of the tests has to be done strategically so as to uh, either deflect attempts to game the test or to uh, get genuine answers through effective framing and produce objective assessment of personality through strategic framing of the test and the questions. Now, tests of cognition in this sense are probably better because if we can directly test a cognitive skill, that would seem to be more immune to the self reporting limitation. And, so I do like, you know, yeah. And the thing with, I covered this point in a previous video that, you know, these tests with respect to like Enneagram, for instance, MBTI focuses more on cognition, how one thinks, and Enneagram, for instance, focuses more on motivation, what drives a particular individual. And you know, so yeah, I think that's an interesting point, and it's one that I made in a previous live stream. As I said, the distinction between cognition and motivation, and you could certainly have uh, there are correlations between MBTI types and Enneagram types, but these correlations are not rigid, and ultimately, we can't. For instance, what I'm saying is this: we, by determining one's type in one system, we can't necessarily correlate, extrapolate over, and determine someone's type in another system, right? Um, so extrapolating across tests. Uh, Hold on, I'm going to be right back. I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'll leave the stream on though, so that if there are any questions or relevant points, then uh, those can be raised. All right, sorry about that. Yeah. So in any case, all that I was saying is hopefully the last thing I said was coherent. But uh, yeah. So the thing with these, I am in the typology community, the two most signature systems that are referred to uh, are Enneagram and MBTI. And my only point was um, that it's not very easy to extrapolate across these systems because they essentially measure different things. And so to determine one's type in one system, uh, we cannot then extrapolate from the type result in that system to a definite result in another system. And it's because the systems measure different things. Enneagram, for instance, measures or assesses one's fundamental motivations and drives and emotions, and the other addresses and assesses one's cognition and manner of thinking. Um, So again, right? You, these systems don't translate into each other, which is not to say much. But this video isn't so much on our capacity to extrapolate across systems. Rather, it's simply a comment on the self-reporting limitation of personality tests, which at this point are unavoidable until we can develop more sophisticated tests and ways of modeling cognition, behavior, and motivation. Thank you for watching.